Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you for joining us today for the Student Design Portfolio Cheat Sheet event, which is presented by the Lubalin Study Center of Design Typography here at Cooper Union. For those who may not know the Lubalin Center, Lubalin Center was opened in 1985. It's the space I'm actually physically sitting in. It was created to preserve the collection of the work of Herb Lubalin, one of the more important figures in graphic design history. The goal of that was to share his work with the design community and students of design as a way of honoring his legacy, and also give people a chance to study his innovative work firsthand by being able to access the physical material. Over the years since 1985, the collection has grown in leaps and bounds. The collection is quite deep. There's over 60,000 pieces of design ephemera collected here, covering about 150 years of graphic design and spanning pretty much the whole entire continent, or all of the continents, I should say, the entire world. We have an incredible deep collection of material. We have work by many well-known designers, and also designers that are lesser known, and the ones that should be better known, designers like the more famous ones you might be familiar with: Tibor Kalman, Elaine Lustig-Cohen, Aaron Douglas, and others. So it's a very big collection, and it is open to the public by appointment. If you wanted to come and see the collection, just give us a shout. I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you're in New York, give us an email, stop by and look at the collection. If you're outside of New York, if you're visiting New York, definitely come by and check it out. Well, we're super happy to be doing the first of what I hope is many events that focus on students, to kind of give a platform for your questions and sort of the things that students and recent graduates would want to know about design, professional spaces for our students at Cooper Union, but also students all across. And I'm going to introduce Matt Owens, who will lead the presentation today. We will take questions afterwards at the end, so send your questions in the Q&A. You can send them now, and we'll take questions at the end for about 15-20 minutes. So yeah, if you have questions, make sure to send them in the Q&A, not the chat. We'll monitor chat, but Q&A is the best way to do it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my good friend and colleague, Matt Owens, who is a founding partner and creative project lead at Athletics, a New York-based creative studio. Matt is originally from Texas. He studied graphic design at Cranbrook Academy of Art, something that he and I share. This magical place out in the north of Detroit, which is, yeah, it's just magical and an incredible space. After Cranbrook, he moved to New York during the heyday of the Silicon Alley. In New York, he developed design studio and worked on many projects, including some projects that are now in SF MoMA's permanent collection. He's worked with clients like Sony, Nike, and Cooper Hewitt. Matt founded Athletics in 2004 with Jason Jenikov. At Athletics, Matt has led projects for clients, including Music Together, Pulitzer Prizes, and JP Morgan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to lead you through the presentation today. Thanks, Matt, for being here.
Thank you. Here, I'm going to put for everybody can hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Yep. I'm going to put actually a copy of the presentation in the chat. So not that just guys can grab it, because this will be for everybody. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get to it. All right, you guys see this okay? Yep. All right, so just to start off, hi there. One thing about this presentation in general is this was kind of born out of a article I wrote on Medium called Student Design Portfolio Cheat Sheet. If you guys get access to the presentation, you can check that out. But it was a way of documenting a lot of the insights that I've had over the years, having spoken to tons and tons of classes all over the nation that have come to New York and would come to visit, and having tons and tons of interns over the years. You know, to sort of introduce athletics, as Sacha said, we've been around since '04. We're about 25, 30 people right now. You know, we have strategists, managers, designers, technologists, executives. You know, for us, I think our big belief is that good design should inspire meaningful change, and we partner with entrepreneurs to turn ideas into sustainable businesses, and industry leaders to adapt to demands of modern culture. So big projects like IBM, for example, and then smaller, more passion projects. With that, I wanted to talk portfolios. So I've seen and reviewed hundreds of student portfolios over the years. And, you know, it's interesting that often over the course of all the ones that you get, especially around graduation, you get a lot of good, okay ones. And you get a lot of average, okay work. And you get some super solid ones, but you don't really get that many standouts. And it's interesting. And I've always asked myself, why is that? And I think as a student, the four things here on the right are the things that I always kind of see as big pieces, right? Distractions. You're in school, design classes are taking up a lot of time. It's hard to do your portfolio. Time, it seems like you never have enough of it. Knowledge, you might be struggling with After Effects or trying to find a great typeface. It just, you're trying to understand and learn. And then of course, motivation. Sometimes it's just like, you don't want to do it. It's like, it becomes really challenging. So I think those four pieces, distractions, time, knowledge, and motivation, are often factors. And, you know, I think for me, this presentation is really about giving you some insights into how we think about portfolios when we're looking at interns, and just giving you some tools to try to work, kind of fight through the distractions and the time and the motivation to do better work. So, you know, I've broken this down into sort of major tips and guidance, and I kind of feel like a lot of this is just common sense. You know, I think everyone gets a little overwhelmed. They feel like they're on the computer all the time, or they're like, oh, what fonts, what colors should I use? So hopefully this presentation will allow you to give some of those basic common sense things that'll help you along the way. I'm going to break it down into 5 areas: projects, which is what to show and why; portfolio, the form a portfolio takes; articulation, speaking about your work; engagement, getting your foot in the door as an intern or as a junior designer; and then the epilogue, which is sort of some final thoughts. With that, projects. Now, this is a quote from Max, who is an intern, was an intern with us not too long ago, that's now a junior designer at Pentagram. And, you know, Max says, the opportunity to be involved in multiple projects spanning the fields of UI, UX, visual identity, and front-end web development. My time as an intern at Athletics was a rich learning experience that helped me become a more well-rounded designer. The Athletics team is a talented group of people who were always supportive, open to my questions, and an overall pleasure to work with. So you can see from Max that when he's an intern, he's touching a lot of different things, and he's part of a team. So, and then this is great. Cherlin just left us as well. She's at base now. And it's like everyone works creatively, efficiently, actively communicates, and they're the most caring people in the world. I learned a lot from my colleagues. When I look at them, I always think those are the people I want to become. And so, of course, these are amazing things. These are amazing quotes to hear from our former interns. But it goes to show you the culture and what we're trying to foster when we bring in interns. We want to bring you in and make you an active participant in the work. So when you make work as an intern, you will likely not have a lot of client projects. There'll be a lot of student projects. And, you know, the trick is what to show and how much to show. And so I think my guidance is to focus on 8 to 10 strong projects. I think 8 is a good goal to shoot for. You know, I found when you're presenting or you're sending a PDF or you're making a website or you're talking about your work, you know, 4 projects might be not enough, 5, but more than 10 might be too much to show, and having 30 or 40 minutes to talk to someone, whether it's virtually or in person. So I would focus on, you know, those 8 projects as a good goal, and having them all be equally strong in different ways. These are the things that we're looking for when we evaluate portfolios for internships. Is typographically strong. We want to make sure that your work reflects a strong grasp of type. Strong photographically. I think there is this really, I think even if it's reference photography for a project for school, I think making sure that your photography is super, super strong is crucial. We want to see some degree of cultural and social relevance from your projects. So the substance of them should show that you're thinking about the larger cultural and social relevance of graphic design. Brand systems, we want to see a system at work, not just a logo, but how the entire brand system operates in the world. That could be logo, color, photography, how it operates across a lot of form factors. I love in a portfolio, one of those 8 to be a passion project, something that you feel really strongly about. And to sort of feed off of that, I like to see a self-initiated project. It's always great to see a project that is not from school, that it could be your friend's band, it could be a rock video you made, it could be, any number of things. But I think self-initiated projects, a zine, help us as an agency understand that you're motivated about graphic design beyond just school projects. I love seeing a little bit of process, meaning how you got somewhere, but I find that too much process can be a little overwhelming in the time. I don't like to see, I have a hard time evaluating incomplete work when we look at portfolios, just because there's not a lot of time. So I want to be able to look at it and kind of get where you're coming from, digest it, make sense of it. And just incomplete work is maybe just a little more difficult to parse. Forms, I think it doesn't matter what the form takes, as long as it's telling the best story to bring the story to life. So as an example, like it could be book covers, book spreads, websites, mobile apps, social tiles, signage, posters, packaging, banners, billboards, brochures, any number of things. I don't think you need to show all of these, but I do think you need to think about the forms the design project takes that are expressing the intention of the project the best. Because you're building a portfolio of around 8 strong projects, you want to be able to have also a variety across the work. You don't want to repeat, show everything on a phone repetitively. Variation is going to show, it's going to bring to life your project in a more dynamic way. So I'm not showing any of athletics work for a reason in this presentation. I'm showing work from interns that we accepted. So I think this is an example of a project that Cherlin did, one of our former interns. She did this, and I wanted to show you why we like this project. So for us, when we were looking at our portfolio, we're like, okay, this is, it's strong typographically. Cherlin is making an effort to take the mark and bring it to life in animation. That thematic animation in the mark is being expressed in a billboard, for example. We're able to see the application of that logo on, different things, the side of a building, a helmet. What's really great is she went so far as to build an iconographic system, you can see below here, that kind of expresses the spirit of the system and as a supplement to the system. And then of course, photography, and then simple applications like a billboard or business cards. So I think this is a good example of, like, it's not a ton of things to look at, but it's strong. It checks off all those boxes that we're looking for. That is like, okay, this potential hire has a command over typography, color, understands systems, those kinds of things. And then wanted to show Max, this is a piece he did for an art gallery. And for me, I really like this piece, not because it was animated, but because it showed a lot of restraint, but it was really strong. So you can see that he has the O mark that fits into this kind of shield shape, and that window kind of can become inverted and become a window into putting in artwork and putting in different things and bringing the brand to life. So, you know, for us as a art gallery and, you know, being able to show a system that works in that context was really great for us. And you know, Max is a fantastic designer and is super awesome to work with. But before we met him and we were evaluating work, this shows in a simple way that there's a rigor in the typography. There's a command of restraint, making something sophisticated but super simple, and just showing enough moving parts that we're like, okay, I get it. Let's give this guy, let's chat with this guy and talk to him a little bit more. So portfolio. So Johnny just left us as an intern as well. He was here for a bit of stretch over the fall into the winter. And he says, going to athletics differed like night and day from school. The stakes were higher. You learn how projects scale, how professionals work, and what it takes to make it here in NYC. I personally figured out more about what I wanted out of my career and how to get there. In short, it put my education in context. And I think that's good. That's a good prompt. You know, Johnny and I work together every day, and, you know, we treated him pretty much like any other designer he was. And, you know, for me, it was about giving him sort of an education and like, okay, here's your skill set. Let's put it to practice for client work. Let's have you be on those client calls. You know, let's let you work with that team to build your skill set and to understand how all the moving parts come together. So what is a portfolio? I think a lot of people kind of stumble upon this because of the digital age. You know, is it a physical object? Is it a presentation? Can we use an iPad or a website? Is it a PDF? Can I show stuff on Instagram? Do I need a laptop? I think these are all kind of good questions, and largely the answer is yes, they can be kind of all of these things, but I think there's some good rules of thumb for what works and what doesn't. So I want to jump in there. I do think you should be able to physically present your work in some capacity as well as virtually. And I do think having some kind of website is still very important, because oftentimes folks that review portfolios aren't going to be able to, you know, look at things immediately. So having a website is very key. And then I think also having a presentation version of your portfolio as well as your resume in a presentation or PDF format is crucial as well. So one thing you need to think a little bit about is that, like, the experience of viewing a website or a PDF with you sitting at an interview is very, very different than viewing something when you're not there. So, you know, I think you need to think about the portfolio as something that needs to be used for different experiences, right? It needs to be effective for someone that's sitting with you, even if it's on Zoom or if it's physically, but also it needs to be the work without you. So I think giving some thought to that, making sure that, you know, you understand that, like, the work will never speak for itself. You're going to have to write about it. There's going to have to be some clarification as well as what it looks like. So this is my kind of subjective view on what I've seen, which is I'm using Google Slides right now just because they're easy to share. I would say the one caveat is they're a little clunky to use, but they are free and easy to share. And you're able to, you know, send a PDF, export a PDF from Google Slides very easily. You know, a PDF can be very, very email friendly. I think Keynote is more beautiful and presents better, especially in person. It handles video much better, but from the way Keynote works with the iCloud, it's harder to share those with a lot of people, and sometimes it just gets a little fussy. But it is, if you're planning to, like, show a lot of video and you feel like you would show that in person or through a Zoom, I think we use Keynote for things that have a lot more video in them, or UI UX that needs to be animated. And, you know, I'm kind of not a PowerPoint fan for a lot of different reasons. You know, I feel like it is a little clunky to use. It's kind of hard to use. Some folks use PCs or have PCs and it comes with it and they're comfortable with it. I think in general, I would stick to Google Slides or Keynote and just making sure that you can learn how to export those as PDFs for your work as a form. This is sort of a necessity. A website is crucial because it speaks for you. It can be referred to and sent out to many, many agencies. And it doesn't maybe it require as much heavy lifting as a PDF that's like in an email and might get lost. I think in this day and age, making a website that works on a phone and is mobile first or mobile optimized is crucial. And I just think it's necessary. Being able to show your work in the form of a website is actually a really great exercise. And I just would discourage using generic templates. I think it's just bad form. If you're going to build a website, always try to make a stab at personalizing it, customizing it, making your own, adding some design layer to it that makes it your own. Of course, starting with a template is not bad. And then lastly, forms. So iPad, book, and the laptop, it's not uncommon for us to have students come in with an iPad and show like a swipeable portfolio on iPad. It's not uncommon. The only issue with the iPad is that it's a little hard to present onto like a phone. Like say you have Apple TV and you can like throw the iPad up to the Apple TV. I've seen potential interns and junior designers come in and present on an iPad, and I've seen us spend 15 minutes struggling with getting it to show on like a projection or on a big screen. So I would just say that's one caveat. Having a physical book in person is great, especially if it's a portfolio that like is a selection of your physical material. That's awesome. I think the days of having a book only is not necessary. I think if you come in with a portfolio book only, I think people are expecting some degree of digital work. So I think the preferred format would be maybe bring your laptop and bring physical work if you have it. I've had this done. It's like I've had people just open up their laptop and show us their website. I find that to be weird in person. I think there's a formality to an interview that requires a presentation, and that if you just go through your website in an interview, it just seems like a little like, not lazy is the wrong term, but it's just like it just doesn't seem as formal as it should be in a way. So that's just something to consider. So Keynote or Google Slides and a PDF. I would say, over here to the right, you see 15 to 30 slides, an intro of who you are. I love a PDF that's personalized or a presentation that's personalized to the agency. So it's like, hello, athletics. And you're going to need title slides and descriptions for every project. So, just keep in mind that I love being able to go through a presentation with a person, ask questions physically or through Zoom. And I love getting a link to that and being able to spend time with that. It's not uncommon for bigger files to get linked via Dropbox or Google Drive. But if you don't have to do that, I think it's better if you can just email it. But of course, if it's larger, it's not a deal breaker. And so website, I think the off-the-shelf tools that you have now are great. Squarespace, Wix, website, WordPress, Cargo, Webflow. I think these are all good tools to build a website with. If you start with any of these and you do a little customization and learn how to use custom typefaces, that you're in good shape. A lot of students use Behance and Dribbble, and these are totally great. But I don't know if they're a replacement so much for a portfolio. I'm totally check out Dribbble and things like Behance, but I feel like there's a formality to the website form that shows that you've kind of gone above and beyond to make your work more polished. And then as just a way of building a capability for yourself, definitely download Figma and design your site first. Being able to use Figma to design a site to at least try it out. I think it would give you a good understanding of that tool. I think Figma is becoming more and more one of those mini tools like Adobe Creative Suite that everyone is learning. And then when it comes to building websites across desktop, tablet, and mobile, it's very common, and it's a great tool to learn. And then lastly, I love physical samples. If you've done a record for your friend's band, if you've done a book, if you designed a book in school, if you did a crazy fold out or a poster, I wouldn't bring the kitchen sink, but I definitely would say real stuff is always appreciated. It's supplemental to the portfolio for sure. And I just wouldn't leave it. If you bring it, definitely have it in a great little case and then share it when it's appropriate and put it away. But I think I always love that. I think tactility is always valued, and definitely craft. If you've done book design or anything like that, if it's really printed, you should definitely bring it in, because I think it doesn't matter what agency you talk to, they're always going to appreciate that kind of seeing that kind of work. So the next is articulating yourself. So this is Allison, who's one of our design director, is some things that make good interns: curiosity and enthusiasm, especially wanting to know more about the studio and projects going on than what they're immediately tasked with. It's always good when interns are curious to get involved in other things or see what's happening in the studio, or want to know how they can help and go deeper. I think this is key. It's being vocal and being curious and being positive and wanting to chip in on pretty much anything, because I think it never hurts to ask, and to be, if you're in an internship, it might only last like a summer. Getting exposure to as much as humanly possible and asking is fantastic. And then it's sort of like, how do you talk about the work? That's always a little tricky, right? It's like, you want to explain why, you want to have a problem statement, you want it to be brief, you want it to be clear. I think you want to spell check it, right? You want it to, if your work is well crafted, it won't help your work for it to be misspelled or poorly written. And so I think being able to write about your work, even though brief, is really, really exceptionally important. Explaining your work is tricky, especially when you're starting out, because most of your projects have been made for class. I always like to see students frame their work as projects and not as class assignments. So a project is what everything is. It doesn't matter if it's for a class or for a client. I think that they should be shared in the context of a portfolio as a project, right? It's what we're looking for when we evaluate interns or junior designers, for that matter. Even if it's something made for school, we're evaluating it is, can we see this person? Through the work, do they have the skill set to do the kinds of projects we're looking for? So the more real and project-like and the less student assignment a thing is presented and talked about, the better. You need to have one slide that explains the project, a problem, and a solution. I like this, and it's great exercise for folks to do, which is, a problem is the situation you identify that needs to be addressed. Like, why does this design thing need to exist? And the solution is how you decided to solve that problem. And I think it's always good to have a problem and solution with visuals alongside it, and then you can begin to sort of unpack the portfolio and the other examples of the work. So this is I'm bringing back Max because he just left and he was awesome. So this is he didn't do this for us. He did this before he came to us. So he did a project called chromekit, and you can see that he wrote a problem and a solution statement. He said, "Are you easily distracted while browsing the web? Neglect physical activity and working on your computer, or unaware of how you divide your attention and time?" He's saying the problem is there's distraction, and he's saying the solution, which is his app, is a friendly and approachable solution to alleviate pain points commonly associated with the internet. So as a person evaluating his portfolio, I can be like, oh, this looks nice. What's this about? And I can say, oh, this is an app. It's about, taking distractions on the web and working and being able to come up with a solution to alleviate pain points. You can check out the link here in the presentation to look at his full portfolio. But what we're focusing on here is the amount of words Max has written to explain his project. It's not a crazy amount of words, and it's very, very succinct. And then Johnny and Cherlin, these are two projects that we looked at before they came on. And, this was a dyslexia poster. I believe this was done for school. And you can see his problem statement here, which is, this was a personal project based on quotes that have been said to my little brother or friends of mine that struggle with dyslexia. The poster aims to create empathy and understanding. Okay, great. I get that. And then this multimedia art museum piece that Cherlin made, you can see that she made an identity for a Russian State Museum. And then it contains a dynamic logotype. Every letter is drawn with different media and two bars to resemble film frames. So the idea here is that, she's trying to express multimedia-ness through the logotype being animated and having different forms. So again, two examples of being able to articulate what your work is about, short and sweet, particularly with Cherlin's being able to animate it, it makes it feel really smart and tight, and it feels like, okay, this is a great understanding of how this person thinks in a very brief amount of words and captivating images. I think when you're articulating your work, in the real world, the best work that sees the light of day is not difficult to explain. So it shouldn't be super complicated to explain it. You should be able to write about your work in short sentences that are engaging. Use verbs, make sure it feels fun. It should feel natural to you, but it should feel exciting. Consistency, context, brevity, and clarity, and interest are key. So, we want, I always say to everyone that writes descriptions of their work, write them in a Google Doc so that you can see them all together, so that you can make sure that they all feel equally strong. Make sure they're clear and brief. They should make sense without the visuals. If you read them before somebody sees the work, you should be like, oh, that sounds like a cool project. I want to see that. Make sure the links are similar. Like they just can't have 5 words and then 35 words. You want them to be succinct and kind of even. And have a few people read them and get feedback. Like, don't be shy. Like, I think getting feedback on your work and getting feedback on your writing, making sure that things are spelled well and they're clear to somebody that maybe has not seen your work, I think is great to do. Especially, it's a colleague or a student, you'd be like, hey, I want to make sure this feels right to you. What do you think? And the next is engagement. So I think when you're getting an internship, I love this animated GIF, it's about being the best version of you. So I think professionalism is crucial. Definitely don't freak out, don't get nervous, it's not a big deal. Enthusiasm, be excited, be real, and be appreciative. I think, designers agencies love interns, and interns are awesome, but it's a lot of time out of the day, and it can be challenging. So definitely be appreciative of the time. I think for us, we're always looking for people that are a diamond in the rough and have are going in the right direction. And I can tell you, we've hired interns where the work maybe was a little rough around the edges, but their enthusiasm and their interest in animation or digital, or the way in which they spoke about our work, was the whole package was this person can learn and grow. So I think being the best version of you is a great prompt and a way of thinking about just going into a conversation about your work. Bora, one of my favorite interns of all time, starting my design career, athletics was one of the best choices I made in my life. Bora went back to Korea. She was fantastic. She had not left. We would be working with her today. But I think it's about when you're getting the foot in the door, it's your first job or your first opportunity, and you want to make it great. You want to make it great. And so as much as it is about you and your work, evaluate the work that the agency is doing too, and make sure that it feels like a good fit for you. Um, you know, my view is that the email you write, the resume, and your portfolio are going to do all the hard work. Because we get so many portfolios, we have basically an Airtable spreadsheet that's like all the good potential hires, and interns are all in one spreadsheet, and we go through them every week, every other week, and we look at them as a team, and we evaluate them. And again, you're not there when that's happening, so just letting you know that we evaluate the email, the PD. You'd be surprised. We look at the resume, and not only do we look at what is on the resume, we look at the design of the resume, and then the portfolio, and we bring that all to bear, and we look at it and say, hey, do these all match up? One thing that we also get that's not uncommon is referrals from teachers. It's not infrequent. So there'll be a teacher that might, if they find somebody that's great or is really hungry to get an internship, I might get an email from a teacher that says, hey, you should check out this person. That's not bad. Like, asking a teacher if they have recommendations or know somebody at agencies is totally a great thing to do as well. One of the biggest things I look for is, can I see in the work that you present that you are aware of the greater world of graphic design, and that it is apparent that you're looking at contemporary things and attempting to create contemporary work. So that's important. Like, I need to see in the work that you're aware of what contemporary graphic design looks like. You need to be looking at agency sites. You need to be excited about new typefaces. You need to be out there in the world on Arena, like looking at other people's stuff and references. So I'm not only are we evaluating the project for what's written, for the professionalism, for the form factors you're using, for the concept, for the craft, but it's contemporariness, and because that contemporariness is going to show us that you're hungry to be a designer and you know what design looks like right now. So some do's: be in love with design and make sure your work reflects your love of design. That's crucial. Mention the agency's work you're most excited about when you talk or email, right? If you want an internship with us, look at our website, look at this project, and tell us what you're excited about that we've done. If an agency has an opening for an intern or a junior designer, state that you're applying for that position. You'd be surprised at how many people forget this. Hi, I'm Matt. Here's my work. And they don't really clarify what they're looking for or what they're applying for. Definitely explain what role you're applying for. Explain in brief why you're interested in the role, and if you can, why you think you're a good candidate. You can say, I've spent the summer learning X, Y, and Z and feel that I would be a great asset. Just think a little bit about why you would bring value to the agency. If sending a PDF or portfolio resume, use your first and last name and the file name. This is surprisingly simple, and actually somebody else recommended this, is that we get a lot of resumes, and if you send a resume called resume.pdf, I might have a lot of resume.pdfs in my inbox, and it might get lost. So being able to label your resume and PDF with your name is very, very good. And then make sure your resume looks great, and don't over design it, and list your skills. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. I'm looking at like command over Adobe Creative Suite. Do you know Figma? Have you touched this? Have you built a website before? Like, anything that's going to give us an understanding of all the things that you've been interested in and that you've touched is crucial. Don't copy and paste the same email to each agency. I cannot tell you how many emails I've gotten that were to another agency because the person forgot to take the name and switch the name. So don't do that. Don't send misspelled emails or work if you can. I might have a misspelling in this presentation, but do your very best. Try not to send large files or email attachments. It just becomes a pain, and it's like your work will get overlooked. Don't just ask for an internship. Explain why you're applying. and don't try to overwrite or try to make funny jokes in your email. Like, I think I've seen quite a few people that try to be different by being silly or sarcastic, and I just don't think that's necessary. You know, again, goes back to just be the best you. And you be yourself, but dress for work, even if you're on a virtual meeting, right? It's like, come and look like you, but look like a good version of you. You don't need to wear a suit. You're not going to a wedding, but just definitely dress up. If you're on Zoom, definitely clean up your background, make your bed, plant life in the background helps. We almost all of our interns pretty much in the last 2 years have been virtual, and they've all had great experiences. And so it doesn't matter if you're physical or virtual, make sure, you know, that you're presented well. I think definitely on Zoom calls, making sure that you're professional is crucial. Be articulate, but not verbose. Be positive, don't oversell your work. Definitely ask questions and be curious and have eye contact. I think giving a little bit of space for the people that are interviewing you to ask questions is also crucial. And say thanks and be appreciative for the time. Again, you might only have 45 minutes to chat with somebody. So definitely be positive, definitely be succinct, and try to give as much space at the end to chat a little bit more about what the agency does and what they're looking for. And this is my epilogue. It's a little final thoughts. You know, design craft. Your own journey as a designer, and it will only be as rich as the energy and skill you put into everything you do, no matter how boring or awesome, right? So do the research, always be learning, immerse yourself, work hard, and be driven. You know, it's always like a good kickflip or Ali Impossible here, this GIF is, you know, you're going to stumble and it's going to take a lot of practice. So you're only going to be as good as the energy you put towards your craft. You know, work hard and try to make everything good. Don't be paralyzed by fear of overthinking. Create as much as you can and then edit, evaluate, and refine. I found that across the board, a lot of students don't produce enough work. It's like, I'd rather you overdo it and then bring it back in, because you're just going to end up being able to select from better things. Learn about contemporary type foundries and typefaces. Learn some level of motion, brands, or living things. Learn Figma, or at least familiarize yourself with it, because digital is so central to kind of everything we do now. And then, you know, phones are good cameras, no excuse for bad photography. Get feedback from friends, teachers, and designers you respect. Try not to rip everything off the internet. Definitely make your own stuff. I still love, photography. Like, you know, if you can shoot your own work, great. If you can't, that's okay too. Do your research on agencies. Focus on ones that align with your work and values. This is important. Don't just like get a list of 25 agencies and send them all the same formulaic email. Like, look at the work. Think about what you want. Think about what they're doing. Make things you think that will be memorable and you'll be excited to share. Technology like AR and VR or something more crazy is cool, but just make sure it feels like design. I think I have a lot of appreciation for more experimental work, but it has to be seen as somewhat applicable. It can't just be totally, too abstract. It has to be applicable to like a project. Get to know your contemporary type foundries. Here's a few. You know, I think Line 2, Pangram, Colophon, all of these are great. Again, they're in this deck, but definitely try to use. I mean, even if they cost money, or if you get a trial version, like Pangram have a lot of great trial versions of typefaces. Like, use contemporary typefaces. It makes all the difference, right? If you only have Helvetica on your machine, go look at typefaces and buy a few if you can. I think it makes all the difference. There's a big discussion in the world about mockups. Like, mockups are totally okay, right? It's like, if you can't shoot your thing on a phone or whatever, like, and you want to make a mockup and use it, that's totally fine. Just use them wisely, right? Everyone uses them. I think we're beyond the fact of like seeing them all the time. It's just a matter of like how you curate them in your work and making sure they're not redundant and making sure that you have a good variation. You know, I always love great photographs if possible, but oftentimes that's from time and all kinds of other limitations. I love exhibits that are mock-ups that are animated is fantastic. You know, anything that makes it feel crafted and special, I think is going to go a long way. And, you know, Reed, it's nice that one of many sites out there, but I think that it's nice that it's like a really great place to start, because all of the work that they present is really about creative inspiration. And, you know, I think they do a fantastic job. And if you go to it's nice that as a website, it's sort of a benchmark of what's cool in the world right now and what people are looking at. So it's definitely my go-to for websites when I want to be inspired and I want to learn more about new designers or illustrators and that kind of thing. And thanks, that's it. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and maybe we can take a few questions.
Awesome, thank you, Matt. Yeah, let's do some questions. Matt, if you don't mind, maybe posting in the chat again, like the link to the presentation. It's a super generous of you to share the deck with folks, but I think
you want me to post it back into the chat?
Yeah, I think chat would be great. So folks, like if you're watching, like, you know, thank you, Matt, for being generous and like sharing the deck itself, because there's a lot of like things in there that folks might find you know, if you wanted to kind of look it over. And you know, this is live streaming to YouTube, so if anyone wants to watch this back, as soon as we end, it's live streaming now, you can actually scroll backwards. So if you can click on that live on YouTube, there's a drop down and you can like save the link or paste it. You can come back to this video and share with your friends if your friends are in class right now. Yeah, let's take some questions. There's one question going kind of up top, like chronologically as they came in. I think there was a question that came in early when you're talking about incomplete work, and Brandon was asking, what if the incomplete unchosen work could pique people's interest? What's your take on like the work that's like not completely there, like especially let's say maybe someone doesn't have enough projects in their portfolio?
I mean, it's tough. Like I want to show, I think when we're evaluating students, like showing a complete thought is important. Like being able to just show like a lot of logo studies, for example, is just not enough. I do love actually if you end up, I mean, I've seen this before and it to much success, is if you have a lot of things that you really feel good about but aren't necessarily fully completed, being able to create one page of sort of like explorations that show a variety of things that aren't really fully baked, as long as they're all strong, I think that's fine. It's just more about the context that you put them in, so that when I'm evaluating them, I'm like, what am I looking at? I think it's about reducing confusion versus incompleteness, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like there's always that dilemma of like, especially when you're starting out and you're trying to get an internship, like let's say your sophomore year or something, like not having enough projects, there's always that dilemma. But I think like having full sort of fleshed out projects, even if there's a few, but kind of like something that shows depth of thinking, you know, is sort of like the best way to present yourself.
Yeah, like I think within my own student portfolio, I had, when I interviewed for grad school, actually, I think I presented like 8 or 10 projects, and I would say 4 or 5 were really, really strong. And then I would say 4 or so were less deep, you know? So I think if you were to go into, let's say we look at 8 projects, like 4 of them should be deep and 4 don't have to be as deep, you know? I just think the goal here is to show variety in thinking, you know, that's it. And I think I would discourage people from trying to make more work if you don't think it's making the project stronger, right?
So kind of a follow-up question in the Q&A, like how many projects? How many projects is like you mentioned like about like 30 pages sort of like max, like would you say how many projects is that, like 10 projects? Like,
well, like, okay, so if you look at projects, like the way I kind of imagine it is like if you have 8 projects, you can build a website and it doesn't look empty, right? you could probably get away with 6 projects, but probably 8, 9 feels like, wow, this is a real website, right? So think about it in those terms. And then if you think about it in a PDF format, right? If you have a cover slide and you have a, hey, this is me slide, thanks for the opportunity. And then you have, you know, let's say 8 projects and each of those is 3 pages. That's 8 times 3 is 24 pages, right? So, you know, if you're looking at 30-page PDF, that's like more than enough, right? It's like you could get away with less. You know, I've seen portfolios where, you know, maybe a handful of those projects are only 2 slides, right? It's just like slide 1 explains it and shows an image, and the next slide shows a little bit more supplemental. So it doesn't have to be crazy, you know. I think if you go over 30 slides, it's too much, and if it's like 10 slides, it's clearly not enough. You know, so it's and you know, definitely don't be afraid when it comes from a presentation standpoint, a PDF, like to be able to put more on a page if it feels right, or if you feel like it's you're allowed, you know, very similar to what I showed in the presentation. If you feel like you can show the system at a glance, definitely do that as well. You know, I think it is the key here is to show the thinking and show a good body of work, but you know, being able to keep it succinct. So it's a balance.
And I think like something that often like comes up is like the treating the portfolio as a portfolio and not you know, small things like a running footer, your name on every page, like some small details like that sort of signal that this is yours, that this is about my work, like really thinking it as like a shell, a container, a portfolio of my work, you know?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, in a strange way, your portfolio is in itself its own design artifact, right? And so I always struggle with this too, is like how because what you don't want to do is you don't want to over design the container of your portfolio to smother the work, right? So it's like the resume and the portfolio need to feel clean and open, but they should have some design move to it that is yours, right? It should have your name on it. Your name should be on the footer. The PDF should be named you. It could have like a little moniker or something that persists throughout, a leitmotif that is consistent. You know, it shouldn't feel generic, but it definitely shouldn't feel like crazy design so that you can't parse the work, right?
Right.
It's a container, but it's a beautifully designed minimalist container that should have a certain degree of nuance. That goes for the PDF, that goes for the website. You know, I think the website is a little bit different in the sense that you could probably have a little bit more going on if you want. Like I love being able to go through, I mean, I often look at portfolios after hours on my phone if they come in and I don't have time. So being able to view it on a phone and make it, it's like, oh, image, explaining it, video, all those things. I really like that, you know, so a mix of things on the website is good. And you know, if you want to, being able to do some tricky things with navigation or rollovers or color, I think is always good. I just think that the key there is to use restraint.
And from like a website kind of perspective, would you recommend like same level of like descriptions? You know, like project has a description, so if you want to know what it is, like it's not just like images, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, the words you use inside the presentation of your or PDF of your portfolio and what's on the website should be the same. I think the website actually is an opportunity to maybe show a little bit more if you want, or explain a little bit more if you want. You know, image carousels, taking a bunch of static work and making it a video montage. Those are all kinds of opportunities to be able to pack more of what you did in a project. You know, I've even seen a few students do like a making of little sizzle video. So it'd be like project X and it shows the project and then it shows a little bit of what it's about. And then it's like a process video where they just basically took images of all the things they did and kind of put it together as a video. So it was great for me because I'm like, oh, great. Like I get a little see as a little snapshot of the process. So I think the websites are really good in that way, right? They allow you to tell your story. I just think, well, for advocating for students, I think building a website can be a project in and of itself. So, you know, I don't want people to bite off more than they can chew because like when we consume a website evaluating portfolios, we're going through them quite quickly. So, what may have taken you a month to do, we're going in, it's going through it in like 10 minutes, you know what I mean? So I would make sure that it doesn't become an overwhelming task, because, and one thing that I learned early on is like, the website does not solve the problem of the work, right? The website is not the design, the work is. So focus on the work first, and then focus on the digital experience and the PDF and the presentation after the work is done, right? So, that's something that is important, is like focus on getting all the parts and pieces of your projects in a good place. You can lay them out in Illustrator, you can compose them in InDesign, doesn't matter, but laying out your work so that it looks great and that you have the right things is important, it's crucial. And then you can, once you figure out the layout and what you want to live together, then you can apply it.
Something I've often kind of wonder, and I think like something that students also wonder, is like having like different versions of a portfolio, so that you're like, do you recommend people think about who they're sending the portfolios to, and
I don't call it this, I call it like customization. And usually students don't have enough work to be able to like swap in and out 25 projects. But what I would recommend is always customize the cover sheet. So, hey, for the agency, if you're presenting it, and then depending on the capability that that agency is looking for, depending on what you think that agency is good at, like definitely move the projects around, right? So if you're going for an internship with somebody that is more print-based, then maybe show print-based first, right? If you're going to an agency that has more of a brand dimension and it's brand focused, then show a brand project first. So I think it's less about separate portfolios as much as it's more about customizing the order to be able to, and my order is always start strong and end strong, always. And then if you can go in the middle strong, even better, but always start and always end strong.
There's a question in the Q&A that sort of like piggybacks on this a little bit, like in terms of other work, like including how diverse, the question is like from Tanya Durov, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. What are your thoughts on portfolios that are more diverse with the fields they cover? Do agencies view these types of multimedia portfolios as less strong, and then ones that are specialized? So
it depends. Like I feel like when you're going for an internship, seldom are you going for an internship that is a generalist in nature, right? And it's going to be somewhat specific. It's like I want to be a designer, I want to be, a landscape architect, whatever it might be. But I do agree that having a project in the portfolio that has a design dimension, but might be more multimedia or more far afield. Like say, for example, you did something with like a park in New York City and it was about wayfinding and it kind of felt more multimedia, but there was a design dimension. I think definitely include that. I think the trickiest bit is if you have a passion, definitely put that in the resume, but all the projects should have a through line around what you're interested in. But that's not to say if you had kind of like, I know a lot of interns that have like illustration as like a section of their portfolio, like if they love drawing. I think that's okay. It's just, it's not something that we would stumble upon or dismiss for sure. But it would be challenging for me to be able to parse like a portfolio that like wasn't clearly a designer looking for a design internship, so just make sure it has that design through line, but it could have a lot of variety, wayfinding, one could be like just about typeface design, one could be just about something cause related. I think the subject matter can be as vast as you want it to be. Yeah.
I think like the one sort of thing that comes to mind in terms of that, like you mentioned this, like the context or like the things you can put in the cover letter, or like let's say the email, the resume or the email, like those things that maybe don't quite fit into a portfolio, things that maybe kind of speak to you as a person, are the things that might make their way into into the email. I guess like just semantically, just separating like the like the idea of like the cover letter is basically at this point in time is the email, right? It's like the thing that you send, and having, like you said, like a customizable cover to the portfolio is a way to show where you're sending into. So just making sure that like you're
Yeah.
presenting stuff in the best way for
Yes.
where you're sending this to.
Yeah. I mean, personalization cannot be understated. I think that's so important because we get so many resumes and portfolios that like a certain degree of personalization. Like I love it when somebody says, "Hey, athletics," sometimes they refer to the partners, because they've looked on the website. It's like anything that indicates that you've looked at the website and that you've done a little homework. And then when it comes to you, that intro email, it's hard to get a full sense of a person, but if there's a way of articulating your own interests and being, again, it's like being yourself, but and don't be stiff, but like, being a little human. I wanted to answer Thomas Baker's question here about a design student that's a little older, and if the other professional experience is in other fields is valuable. I think that goes across the board. Like I want to see all on a resume. I don't care where you work, what you've done. I want to see the whole thing because I think it's going to help us better understand where you're coming from, and it's going to help us better understand you as a person without having met you before. So if we hired somebody not too long ago that had didn't have a career in design and pivoted to design, right? And we have people that work with us right now that were in one career and have evolved to another. So I think, anything that shows you're a strong thinker and that you're a strong professional is going to be hugely valuable.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Jess in terms of, and you kind of touched on this, but like how concise, how detailed should those like intro emails should be? I mean, like brevity is good, not like, because I would, not to answer for you, but like the time people have reading emails, is also.
Yeah, I would like, we always know that when they come in, they're always looking for some kind of position. So they're all kind of cover the basics. Hi, this is me. I saw you guys had this position. I've been following athletics for a long time. I love this and this kind of project. As a student, I'm graduating in X and I've been doing projects in X and X, and I'm really interested in learning X. My passion for X, and I would love, here's my link to my PDF and my website, and I would love a follow-up conversation. So it's got to be something along that level of depth. It's a paragraph or two is plenty. I think you don't need to put your life story. A little context is totally helpful. Is it 500 words? Maybe too much. Is it 300? Probably. Somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of follow-up, what's sort of, where's the line, in terms of like, when do you follow up? Do you follow up if you had an interview?
Cherlin, who is in this presentation, who was amazing, applied for an internship with us 3 times before she got it. So I think reapplying is totally fine. I just don't think, and if you've submitted your stuff, and at least our agency is really good at following up with you. Like, so if you submit your stuff, we're into it, you're gonna get a call back. But if you don't hear from us, I think doing a follow-up in a week or 2 weeks is totally fine. And I think if you don't get responses back from agencies, don't get discouraged. It could be any number of things. So definitely don't take it personally, and then definitely reapply. Like if you're a junior and you want to reapply when you're, a senior, do it. If you're at the top of the year and you want to apply and then you feel like you've gotten better and you've updated your portfolio, apply again. Like I don't think, I wouldn't overdo it, but definitely don't be discouraged, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess, again, like the idea is like the cover letter, like is that communication level. Hey, I'm a human. I make awesome stuff. I'd love to work for you. Just
Yeah.
having that sort of,
I think it's important. And it's like, I mean, a photo of you on your website, it's not going to hurt, you know, like saying like, what is this person? I mean, it's not necessary, but it's like, I think I get more out of the work and what you write in the email and the resume, just because that's really what we're looking at. You know, and just I think I think it's good. It doesn't matter who you are, or how old you are, or where you come from. It's like, we're looking for skill and enthusiasm. That's it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Let me see if there's other questions. There's a question. Yeah, I think you touched on this, but like, you know, in an email, when you send that sort of initial email, like, do you prefer a website or a PDF? Probably doesn't matter, right?
I kind of like both. What I like to see is, well, I like to see at minimum a link to your website and an attached PDF of your resume. That's nice to have, because the way we do it is, if that resume is given to us, it goes into a system where we actually bring it up and look at it with the team that's evaluating them. So that's great. If you do a website, a PDF of the resume, and a PDF portfolio, that's fine too. I think there's no hard and fast rule there, but definitely a link to the website if you don't have the PDF. You know, the PDF for me is nice to have, because we do look at it, you know, and it's redundancy that doesn't hurt, right? It's like, just imagine that, you know, 30 other people just like you are applying for the same position, let's just say. Then the more tools you can give the agency to evaluate you, the better, right? But not to overwhelm. So, you know, I think I always love, I mean, a link to a Google Slides is okay too. I'd rather have a PDF a PDF presentation, just because it feels a little bit more formal and it allows you to design it, right? Because again, like the resume, I am evaluating the design of the presentation, or the PDF rather.
So I would kind of like echo that, like, do design your resume. Don't not design the resume, right? Double negative, but like, definitely design the resume. Don't over design it.
Don't over design your resume. I feel like that trying to make I think the resume is a great test and restraint, and actually, strangely, I almost find it to be the most difficult part of a portfolio, because you want the resume to be really good and smart, but you also want to, it's a big typographic challenge, because you got to get all your info on one page. It's got to be simple. It can't be crazy designs. It has to feel native to the rest of your work. So, you know, being able to have like the typographic strength and like nuance of your resume is actually it's a great thing to focus on, because it's going to show your type skills in action, right?
Yeah, and it's like a good way to think about it is like, it's not a project, but it is a project. You know, if you tackle it, but don't think of it as like, it's not a poster, but like, make the type good, like make it readable, because someone wants to actually get information from it. You're not making a visual statement, you're making like a factual statement about you, and you want that to be accessible.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I think resumes can be beautiful. Like, I would recommend that. It's like, if you look at through the lens, like when you look at your resume, you have to ask yourself, is this beautiful? And if you can't say that, yes, this is beautiful, then you should probably keep designing it. Like, it shouldn't look cool. It shouldn't necessarily look funky or weird or loud, but it should look beautiful. It should feel like, wow, that's really nicely executed.
Yeah. And I think another kind of nice thing to think about is like, make it match your portfolio. If you're using some, typefaces, like, so it feels like a system. What you want
I mean, there is a lot of discussion around like personal brand, and you can, if that's something you want to explore, being able to, you know, let's say any of the folks on this, it's like, if you want to build your own personal brand and kind of have a little bit of a brand thread that exists on the website and on your business card and things like that, I think that's totally great. I just wouldn't make it too crazy. You know, it should be, if you do your own kind of personal brand, like a little like monogram or something like that, just make it beautiful and make it minimal, so that it doesn't become so what you don't want it to be is a distraction to what you're trying to accomplish. You know, it's a container to a large extent.
Well, here's a good question from Catherine. If two people have similarly great portfolios, how do you determine who gets the job?
We talk to them. It's all about the interpersonal skills.
Mhm.
It's personality. I've interviewed many people, and what you will do, Catherine, is you will interview with more than one person. Oftentimes you might interview with two designers, but there might be like an additional follow-up where to confirm or validate, right? So that I might interview somebody and be like, they were awesome, and I want to hire them, but I might be like, but they need to talk to Allison. Like Allison needs to confirm this for me. So often, and I'm sure other agencies are the same, it's the buddy system where I'm not going to just look at a resume and decide. You know, we've looked at junior hires, and we might actually, two or three of us might go through all of them together, and we'll put them on a list, which is like definitely contact this person and get a Zoom call going, right? And so we'll let's say we look at 10 resumes and portfolios. We might look at 10, and we might put many of them into like we don't want to follow up and have a call with them. 3 or 4, might get calls, and then there might be one on the hold, which is like, oh, this person's good, but I want to call them after we talk to these other 3, that kind of thing. And so, you know, there will be a certain degree of vetting, and it comes down to, if the portfolios are equally strong, it just comes down to the personality and the professionalism skill set. You know, if one person has an additional, if both of our people are lovely, if one person has like a little bit more motion, maybe that might be the deciding factor. Again, you know, it's always hard, but definitely personality matters.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, don't get discouraged. Like, and also keep in mind that like multiple people get brought in. Like, it's not just like one resume gets selected and one person gets interviewed. There's always
no. And one thing I didn't touch on, which is like, if English is not your native language, that does not matter. Like, you know, I think for us, that is, as long as you can do the work and you understand the concepts, and you're able to like listen and get feedback and articulate yourself. You know, we have had interns and designers from the entire span of the globe, many of which were not born in America. So don't ever get discouraged about that, you know, because for us, that just given the nature of the world, right? You know, it's global now because of the pandemic. We've hired people all over the world. So we're not evaluating it based on where you're from.
Yeah. Let me see. Just skimming through questions.
Okay, there's this question, case study format.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So a case study is just how you articulate your work. And I like seeing a little bit of process, but it's like a case study is just the story of the work, right? And it could, each one of your pieces doesn't have to take the same story, right? It shouldn't have the same, like you shouldn't be like showing the same forms, being like, oh, I started with a logo and then I started with a book. Like, they shouldn't be redundant. They should have variety, right? And so I don't think there's a perfect answer for like what the perfect case study is. But what I do want to see is like, what's the name of it? What's the problem? What's the solution? You know, I want to be able to see an introductory visual that gets me into that headspace. And then I want to see examples of how that story unfolds, and, you know, a little captioning along the way so that I understand what I'm looking at is fantastic. And that's all a case study needs to be, right? You know, quotes are always great. Any kind of supplemental information is great, but I definitely would try to keep it succinct. So when we talk about a project or a case study format, you know, I don't think there is a format. I think the format is whatever format is right to tell the story.
Yeah, and in that sense, like, it's less about like how you got there, less about process. It's more about like the finished thing. Like, walk us through like what the end product is, right?
Right, exactly. Because, you know, everything that you do in your portfolio is it's a curated demonstration of your work, right? Just like a case study in my agency, like when you look at something on our website, there's 1,000 other things that were executed through that project that did not necessarily see the light of day in the form of the case study. So the case study needs to be a curation of the story and needs to show enough moving parts to tell the story. It needs to feel typographically strong, visually strong. It needs to show your command over typography, color, photography, system. show that you have a command over like what a website or a book or whatever it might be, but it should be curated, right? You shouldn't show everything. And when it comes to process, I like a little bit of process, but it just given the nature of it, it's hard to show process. So, I mean, maybe if you have one project where you're like, you really want to show how much work we had to, like, say you went and did a project where you had to like map 20 neighborhoods. Like you should have a slide that said like, before we did the project, we had to do all these things. Like I love a little bit of that work if that's needed. No, I think that's fantastic. I just don't think you need, if a project doesn't have that, then it's not necessary.
I think like one advice I often give students is like when they're thinking about their portfolio, there's kind of multiple scenarios to the portfolio, at least two. One is when you're there in the interview and you can walk through the portfolio, but there's also the level where you're not there. And I often give the advice to students to think like, what's the story of which project? If you're not there to tell it, are these images going to do the job for you? So
Right.
like what you said, like about like if you have a process that's crucial to how this project evolved, and you want to highlight that and you're not there in the room to explain that, make a slide, make an image, or like put an inset in the page or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like the best thing you can do is when you get something done in a presentation form and you don't know or you want feedback, like show it to somebody, show it to a teacher, show it to a colleague, show it to another student. Say like, do you understand what I'm talking about here? Is this confusing? You know, I don't, you know, it's like a little storybook, right? So it's like being able to understand what you're doing and why at the top, and then some supplemental captioning across the rest of it is totally fine. And if there's something a little long, if one of your projects or two are a little bit longer and you need to write more, as long as you kind of pace it out, I think that's totally fine. You know, again, you know, what you don't want to do is you want it to feel consistent and somewhat consistent and holistic, and you don't want to overwrite and have something be 20 slides and then have another one be one, right? You want a certain degree of parity. It doesn't have to be perfect.
There's a question I just saw that was interesting. So including work from like other companies, and even if it's not your best work, what's like, you know, especially like
if you have, I mean, that's not a bad thought. Like what I've done, what I always encourage people to do, if you did something for a previous client that is good because it's for a previous client, I mean, when I did this in the past is like, I would revisit it and make it better, you know? So like definitely show it, but show a better version of it if you can, you know? And there's sometimes where I will, in the past, like I've seen where your website might have your best work, but then the PDF might have an additional like previous internship work to show a capability. Like if it's something that's really out there in the world that you feel really good about, and maybe it's not the strongest piece, but it was done and it's really in real life, absolutely include it. Even if like there's a little, like I know some interns that had like marketing internships, so they would do like marketing stuff, which is like not really that great design wise. And I think if you feel like it's going to show that you have been in a professional context, just try to like, you know, don't necessarily redesign it, but try to put the best piece of that forward, right? But definitely previous professional work in your portfolio is always going to make it stronger. Just if it just so happens that you don't feel it's visually that great, just curate the heck out of it, right? I'd rather see one slide of the marketing campaign you did for your previous internship that you might not be the strongest design work, but it reflects that you have that, you know?
It's also like there was a question earlier in the Q&A about like how you make more work, you know, like outside of assignments. And I think like often like you can make more work by revisiting a project, expanding a project. Like if your work feels like it's like thinner in places, like take a project and I don't know, do collateral for it. You know, if like all you had is a poster, could that poster turn into like other pieces? So
totally.
And even like something that maybe is like a job that wasn't so slick or something, like maybe expanding on that or kind of taking a different lens to that and just using it as a platform to make another new piece. You
Yeah.
can always invent new work. It doesn't always have to be real or an assignment.
Yeah, I mean, one exercise that I encourage students to do is like, when you're putting the portfolio together, put together the strongest project first, the first two ideally, and then every other project, you should look at them and evaluate them and say, what do I need to do to elevate these projects to the level of those projects that are already strong, right? So there always has to be a level of like design imagineering at the student level to like push every project up to kind of a little bit more of equivalent level. So be prepared to do that, right? Like you may have done a student project at the beginning of the semester and moved away from that. And at the end of the semester, you're actually better. And you go back to that old project and say like, oh, I could spend a weekend and I could tweak this and make this way stronger. You should definitely do that.
So I think, we're getting closer to 8, and I think we just have like a couple of questions, and there's only a few questions we haven't answered. There's a follow-up to something you were talking about in terms of like the case study, kind of breaking that structure of the case studies. So the question is like, as a follow-up, would you suggest not having all your projects use, let's say, user personas, but more specific special steps? So, and I think you said that, right? Like just a little variety between how you show projects is helpful, so that they're not like,
it's surprise and delight them. It's like, think about a storybook. It's like, it's always great to break up a project with like a bigger gesture. So like, say you have 3 or 4 slides. You have an intro slide that explains the project, then the second slide should be the strongest demonstration of that. Then you might have the third slide might be just one image of a big gesture, and then the third or fourth slide might be go back to more examples. Like, I think it's all about variation on a theme and what works best. So in a way, and we do this too, is that when we go on our website or we do any of our presentations, all of our case studies are composed, meaning a designer takes all the raw material and we actually design the thing before we build it online or wherever. And it's all the composition of that project, that case study, is a design exercise in and of itself. So that's where, like, you might be like, oh, it would be great if I had like a mobile version to fill in this space. I'm going to make one because it'll just make it look better. So the resume is an exercise in composition. The website is an exercise in composition. Every case study and PDF format and presentation format is an exercise in composition. So you should always think of that.
Yeah. There's a question about like the style and general consistency. What are your thoughts on style and general consistency of your work? Like,
I think as long as the work's strong, I think variation in style is great, right? I think you're young. You should show, if you could show that you're excited about different visual languages, and that's absolutely fantastic. I think it's more beneficial to you as a student to show more variety than it is to like try to make everything kind of homogenous. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to explore. You may do a book project that's all like in serif type and feels like really formal and might be all in Garamond or something like that. That's great. Like, do that. If you can show me that you can handle Garamond as well as you can handle some crazy typeface, like, fantastic. Like, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, so it's less about like defining your personal style, which I think takes a bit of time to do, and kind of just being able to like prove or demonstrate that you're capable and like curious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can have a personal style, like if there's something you're really passionate about, and maybe that should be reflected in a handful of the projects. But I think when you're in this first gig, like you're going to be working on a lot of projects that are from the everything in between. And so I think being able to show variety is going to help you get your foot in the door, because your personal style and passion are fantastic, but it might not be applicable to whatever client project you're put on, right? You might have to put that to the side and focus on a certain visual language that's needed for that client project specifically. So personal style is great. Don't not think about it. I just wouldn't make it be the driver of the portfolio unless you're like an illustrator and want to create an illustration portfolio around a specific style.
I think that's a really good distinction. Yeah. I think like maybe just the last question. I think it's a good question, like interesting too, like expectations for portfolio submitted for an internship versus a junior designer position. Like what's the expectation there? Like how do you, is it different?
It's so hard. I mean, I feel like we have had quite a few interns that have become junior designers. I think it's not uncommon for a person that's already had one internship to apply for a junior designer role. I think it's rare that a student that is coming right out of undergraduate that has not had an internship to be hired as a junior designer. Like, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think when we look at the resume, having some previous experience, even if it's one internship or more even, is good to get that junior design role, right? So yeah, I mean, I would say general rule of thumb, always try to get an internship first if you can. It's just it's going to give you a leg up because what it's going to tell an agency is that you've already been in an agency context and you've already worked. You'll probably have a handful of those projects, as was mentioned, that might not be your strongest work, but were actual real work. Like that's gonna benefit you greatly.
Yeah, and maybe the last question to totally close this, but something that I get asked a lot is like the timing. Right. Sensor. The timing of like when do you email like for internships, like if you're looking for a summer internship, how do you start in January? Do you start in like May? Like what's too soon? What's too late, in terms of like internship?
I feel like we're always I feel like if you talked to me 2 years ago, I would say always apply with the rhythms of the school year, right? So like apply for the summer for sure. But I feel like internships, at least for us, are year round. We're always have an intern, always. So the issue I would have is like, can you handle an internship while you're in school, right? Like that could be overwhelming. But I think, if you're out for the summer, apply earlier than later, right? So like we have people are going to be graduating in April, right? So, if you can get us a resume in March, like late, in mid-late March, like that's great. Like being able to give me lead time is always good. We've hired interns that didn't start for a month or two in the past, right? And then we've also had interns that have started immediately. And we've also had interns that were part-time. Not as frequently now. We usually like to have them full-time because it's just harder to give them work. But there have been instances where we've had interns that were here for the first half of the week or something like that. But I think as a general rule, it would be full-time. They're always paid, obviously. And getting your portfolio together earlier and making those contacts earlier is going to be helpful because we definitely around graduation we get the deluge. People are trying to figure out what they want to. I want to stay in New York for the summer. I'm graduating, or I'm out for the summer. I want to stay in New York. So everyone's kind of fighting for those jobs around graduation. So I would just say the earlier you can get out there in the market and have a strong body of work and get some phone calls, and even if you're saying, hey, I'm graduating and I can start, whenever it is, like May, like that's totally fine. I think coordinating for the future is absolutely something that we do.
Which makes the portfolio, having your portfolio, like don't wait till the end of the school year to get your portfolio. Like you want to have something, you can always add more projects, but like have something that is good to go like mid-semester or something like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in like, packaging your project for portfolio as you do it, right? The hardest thing to do is to finish a project and then put it on a shelf and then forget about it, or forget where the files are, or forget where the images were, and then having to do a portfolio later. If you can like portfolioify as you go and be able to like, okay, I love this project. How would I put that together? Let me get all those assets. Let me make sure I have them. Let me build my compositions. Let me tighten up like whatever I need to tighten up. If you can do that throughout the semester, oh my God, it's going to put you in so much better position, because you won't have to go back and revisit everything and scramble.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to post the link in the chat for the deck. Thank you so much again for sharing that. I'm going to post the YouTube link if folks want to watch this after. You can scrub it. But Matt, thank you so much. Like a million thanks. This is so insightful. I think like that so many things like just kind of resonate, and I think like all these things that we kind of like have to learn by osmosis a little bit. I think it's really good to just like bring it forward. So thanks for your generosity with all the stuff in your
No, and
time.
my last words of wisdom is a portfolio is never done. It doesn't matter if you're 21 or 51. Like your portfolio is never done.
Never did.
Right? So just embrace it. It's like the more you can get on board, and self-curation and self-storytelling and putting your best foot forward and curating your work and being able to talk about it and being able to write about it is something that will never be done. And you should get in the habit. If you can get in the habit at 21 or 22 and make sure it's a habit, then it's going to put you in a much better place.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you,
Cool.
Matt. Thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you have a great night. Good luck with the rest of the semester and everything. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Matt.